MyGM has been probably the most respected game mode in the NBA 2K franchise in these last about 5 years. We agree that Park, My Career, My Team have all these degenerate money grabbing techniques that make them either unplayable or really disgusting. But MyNBA has strayed away from that for many years. And we get our first look at their biggest changes. They did an entire video. So what I'm doing is getting that video and grabbing the most important pieces of information and showing everything that I found that was interesting. Here are the 5 most interesting things in the MyNBA trailer. Get pasa to the pack. It is Pack here. If you like that kind of content, please join the pack and subscribe. Let's get in, man. First up is what we all came to see, gameplay. Most important clip is this Kevin Love jump shot clip. Some people are saying that he does a quick stop here, sets up to the 3-point line and greens it, and that is exciting a lot of people. Look, there's no denying that the gameplay has looked a lot cleaner. Animations are transforming into one another very nicely, and you can see that here. You gotta admit that does look exactly like Kevin Love's jumper. The way Draymond Green closes out does feel like something that he would do, except Draymond would probably put his foot underneath Kevin Love. It is a pretty nice clip. Here's also a Larry Bird jumper. This gives us first and most importantly a look at the brand new jump shot. That does look very interesting. This is kind of our first look in a HD format. More importantly is Larry's jumper in general. You see the way that he jumps backwards. You see the form. This is probably the most accurate Larry Bird pull-up jumper I've ever seen in any game, period. Now, it makes me wonder, did they do pro play with older players? Is something that I wonder if 2K is going to answer that question. My only thing is, I know that they added the old filter to match the old style of the NBA back then, but I do think it's a little too dark that it almost adds like a depression to it. Maybe they could do a little bit of touching up with the filter. Up next is the most talked about of this is MyGM. They've added kind of a new style to MyGM that's really interesting. They let you walk around almost like in an open world, or I guess in an open office, where you see your My Player go around, talk to maybe coaches, players, etc. You can even see the city in the background. We also have a first look sneak peek of the city there, maybe. I personally like this. A lot of people are saying that this is going to make things slower and they're not a fan of it. Look, if you think about actually wanting to be a GM, this is part of it. Walking around your office, talking to people, interviews. This is good. Speaking of interviews, here is the first look at the interview system where you sit down with a coach or an executive and have conversations with them of what you want to do. This is very similar to how FIFA does negotiations for players in their manager game mode. It's the same thing here in MyGM. I'm okay with it. I will say that when I was playing FIFA as a manager, it is kind of boring sitting there doing negotiations the entire time. You really have to know your stuff. If you're going to do this, you have to understand cap space and everything that these guys care about if you want to do this well. I can understand why that might be frustrating for some people. There's also brand new perks and attributes to your GM. So for example, you can be focused on sports medicine, business, charisma, analytics. Maybe you're quantitative. What is it that you care about? You can now put focus into that kind of stuff. Very much like a RPG. That's what they're trying to do with this. Again, I'm okay with this. I'm not saying I necessarily love it, but it's a different take. It's an attempt to make it feel refreshing and new. And then in the long run, you could be the most broken GM of all time and make a super team like the Warriors did, or even like the Celtics did last year. It would be a cool experience to get to that point with a bad team, for example. So I'm down. Up next is the NBA Cup, or the in-season tournament, however you want to call it. Here is the first look of it on the schedule now. I will say, first look at it, the court is hella obnoxious. This reminds me of Pro-Am when people do completely black courts or completely white courts. It's very difficult to see. But in fairness, that is exactly how it is in real life. So, I mean, can we really complain? I also really like how they made the crowd darker compared to the court. It really does make it feel like it's a special event, something that the NBA Finals needs to pay attention to, because the Finals always feels very boring and normal every year. This in-season tournament does have a little bit of character in it. Also, you can see the brand new logos in 3D, which is something that they didn't do since NBA 2K, I think it was 15, where they had these really nice animations for NBA logos in 3D. I like it when they make 3D logos. It just makes it feel a little bit nicer, a little more care into it. And finally, the brand new era. This has actually been very controversial for everybody. The brand new era is the Steph Curry era, which is still in the 2016s, early 2020s. It's weird because, I mean, you usually have just like the 90s, 2000s, 2010s. Now they've split up the 2010s with LeBron and Curry. Now, I understand why they did it. There is a era of Curry that we can't deny that, but it almost feels a bit forced. Is the early 2010s and late 2010s that different? I guess you could say three-point shooting really changed a lot, but is that enough to make brand new eras for it? I don't know. I would have been okay if you wanted to name maybe like the modern era, the Steph Curry era. To kind of force in a Steph Curry era made no sense when I'd rather them have a 70s era with Dr. J, but I understand why that's a problem because the ABA situation. So I understand that there's probably a reason why they didn't add an older era, but making a Steph Curry era wasn't the answer to this, in my opinion. Okay, that is everything. What do you guys think about all this? What is the most important information? Leave it in the comments below. If you like this channel, please give it a sub. I'll see you guys next time.